Thank you for having me today. So one thing to add about Energy Iceberg is that in the past 5 years, we built database that as supporting international organizational companies like the IEA to track what's on the ground on the Chinese green hydrogen market. Because so far, what we still seeing is that Chinese market is like in terms of the information about green hydrogen market in the world is still like a missing pieces in the executive decks for most of the company outside of China. So going back to your question, what do we see at this point of the market? I would describe it as like a song of ice and fire, or a story of sweet or bitterness. So from the fire or sweet side, we always know that the Chinese developer has been planning a big part of like pilot project for green hydrogen, and so far we've been in our database, we're tracking more than 11 gigawatt of project. In terms of like over 800 of project, total 11 gigawatt of electrolyzer demand. But for long, the market was always doubting that how much of this project is actually legitimate, how much would they actually move ahead, etc. And what we are seeing at this point, especially in the past 2 months, is that we really see some momentum is changing and is flipping from what we've seen in 2024. There is some growth in the tender for electrolyzer. What we are seeing now is that a lot of those so-called paper project is currently moving to the construction of final investment stage. And what can be proved is that at this point, that by the end of August this year, we currently have a 3.3 gigawatt of tender for electrolyzer already released. Almost 1 gigawatt of that, it was announced in July and August. So September, we haven't really done our full data yet, but I expect a similar momentum. So that's why we expect that this whole year, 2025, China will unleash about 5 gigawatt of electrolyzer tender. But then on top of that, we are also having seen a significant growth in the EPC tender, because there are EPC tender that currently they're not moving to electrolyzer yet, but they're choosing EPC. So the next stage will be like next year or so, we'll see those order being materialized. And that at this point, we believe that by the end of August, the data is about 3.6 gigawatt. So we are fully expecting this year's so combined electrolyzer and the EPC tender, that the Chinese tender in total for electrolyzer demand will be 8 gigawatts. So that will split in 2025 materializing, and then 2026, but then 2026 we will have more order. So to get a comparison, that the EPC amount is about like more than it's double of 2024, and then at this point I think it's about also double of the electrolyzer alone tender for 2024. So we're seeing some significant momentum for increasing demand and increasing order. And we are not even calculating on those demand or orders outside of the open tender. So we're strictly just talking about the tender that is open and there is no contracting deal, etc. But then on the other side, the flip side, on the ICE side, is that the life or the business for the Chinese electrolyzer maker are not necessary. They're enjoying the best of their life. We're talking about a market that is like drastic competition, significant pressure. This is because the amount of player and the capacity there in China, the market, I think the Chinese market commonly believe that there are 350 electrolyzer OEM out there in China. We are actively tracking in our database currently more than 120 OEMs in China. That is the companies that offering like prototypes or products or different offers, etc. And then due to this amount of players, we have seen already in the past 4 years, the price of China's alkaline electrolyzers have been slashed down 70%. So 73%, and PEM also in the PAM, we're also seeing some momentum of reducing price in PAM, probably around 60 to 63% by the end of August compared to 2021. Yeah. So the price make everybody's life pretty miserable for the OEMs in China. And on the other hand, they have to differentiate themselves. They have to invest continuously on R&D to have new product, bigger product, different product. That's why early this year, we actually share in February, all of a sudden there are like 26 or so or 30 AEM electrolyzer being announced in China in 1 week. And then by now, China this year has like 48 new electrolyzer prototype being announced. And that is more than 2024. And so that is also a huge challenge for company, especially the startup, the early stage company and SME. How do they trying to get market share versus the investment into R&D, or at least having the marketing for their R&D, and then the market is not yet consolidated. Although we started to see signs of consolidating, the top 5 used to be just like 50-60% of the market this year. I think is currently at 80%, but it could still change. What is really shocking is that the leaderboard of the Chinese OEM, they are just really highly volatile. So if you look at the top 5 in 2023, 2024, 2025, they're completely different in all sort of dimension. Most of the people outside of China, they know about Longji, Sungrow, but that's a little bit of the story in 2023, 2024. 2024, we have some really unknown new player like called Qingqiji also, or CRRC. They are not a small player. They are the biggest railway, but also renewable manufacturing company in China. But they have been rising quite high in their market share. And this year we will probably see CIMC and Guofu as taking a huge market share. So it's constantly changing who are the top player in China in terms of market share. And also, but on the other hand, a lot of companies, they really want to expand globally. But of course, at this point, it is still very difficult for Chinese company in terms of like local regulation for major market destination like Europe. So overall, it is a lot of more positive, a lot of potential, but on the other hand, still a lot of challenge. I think that's the best to describe for the electrolyzer market in China.